What's up, duelists? Today I've got a very special video for you guys. I'm joined by all three RBET rulers champions. We got Sunny, we got ProStorm, and we got Dimitri. We're gonna be doing a little bit of a roundtable discussion, a little bit of a interview type thing, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So without further ado, let's get into it. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves? Say hi to the people.
Hey, I'm Sunny. I really like to play frogs, and then I play a bunch of other formats all the way up to current day. So if you ever want to talk about any format up to 2024, I'd love to talk about it. Also, I make videos sometimes.
I'm Dimitri. I play frogs. I play a lot of frogs, and I play a little bit of everything else. And I play basically no formats except Edison. I am very one trick in that sense.
Hey, it's ProStorm. Happy to be here. Thanks for having us. Yeah, I like a bit of everything. I'll never say no to anything. And yeah, happy to be here for a good conversation today.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. Let's get right into it, boys. I got some banger questions. I guess the first one's gonna be like the basic how did you get into the game type beat.
I guess I can start. So I'm not sure how it was for everyone else, but I actually played back in the day. So when I was 7 years old, we had some cable with like Japanese TV shows. So then one of them was Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, and that's kind of what I grew up with. So I was watching Judai and Elemental Heroes, and I really wanted to play with those cards. So I went to my locals with like fake cards, and I started playing with those at first. But generally, I'd say eventually I got the real ones, and that's how I started competing. My first tournament ever, I was playing a junk psychic like warrior kind of toolbox deck that was like really bad. You would just go neg and make a junk warrior. But that's what I started with, and eventually I switched to Black Wings before playing more seriously. And then I pretty much quit after I want to say in what's that called? What's that called? It's Order of Chaos, where the Injectors came out. That's kind of where I sort of lost interest. And then eventually in 2021, I got recommended a SEMO video called like Edison format, and I remembered playing that back in the day. So that's kind of how I started. Like after that SEMO video is really when I got back into it.
Pretty similar here. I wasn't in anything competitive at all as a kid for Yu-Gi-Oh! I started at like age 5 or something, where it was surprising that we were even able to do life point math. But we never got to like go to tournaments or anything. It was just playground Yu-Gi-Oh! I got back in through a combination of Duel Links and then the History of Yu-Gi-Oh! Series from SEMO as well. And then Keegan's channel through that. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it was during COVID, near the end of 2020. I was like super burned out from work and was actually taking like a mental health leave. And I used to just play a lot of chess online, but I was a bit bored by just playing Blitz games. So I was looking for something else to take up my time. And I remember playing a bit of what's it called, dueling, whatever it was back in the day. So I tried to find that, and I found, sorry, it was Dueling Network back then. And then yes, I found Dueling Book, and that's how I kind of got into it, got into the FL scene and the community there. So yeah, that's my story, I guess.
Very dope. Very dope. Humble beginnings, playground into COVID resurgence type shit. But no, it's cool. It's cool that you guys have all come together like to play this game. What is it? 15 years, 20 years after its inception, something like that. A little bit over 20 years. My follow-up question is: all of you guys have gone from that like moment of sparked re-interest, and you've taken it basically as far as it can go. Like you've taken the game from beginning point of like, oh, I guess I'll play a few games of Yu-Gi-Oh! Online. You've taken that all the way to becoming basically world champions. So my follow-up question is, what does it take to do that? Like, what does it take to go from starting point, just kind of interested and wanting to play a few games after seeing a YouTube video, to being a world champion?
So, couple things. One, I think a big part of it is like being somewhat obsessed with the game. Definitely playing more than you should definitely helps. I know I've spent a lot of time deck building, and mentally when I'm doing other things or when I'm just like out for a walk, my mind will jump back to different deck building ideas I've had. And so that has definitely helped my process of figuring out decks. I think another part is the replay review in my mind. And I think Sonny was trying to start mentioning this. But there was a full on month, like not last January, but the January before, I think, where all I did was replay review every single frog game I could find. And I reviewed like over 100 games, and I think Sunny was a fair amount of those. And that helped both me and the other Crow's Nest players because I was figuring out their views and like what they were trying to do in the games, and they were able to see what I would have done instead. And so that's when I probably improved the most at the game.
Very interesting. That's kind of like a, what is it, hyperbolic time chamber. You get to play 100 matches and analyze every mistake in like under a microscope or a lens or something like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, I definitely echo that sentiment. For me, I think replay review is really instrumental. It's kind of like, I guess, in chess when you review a game and look at what the engine would recommend, except there's no engine in our game, and we kind of just have our friends to talk things through. I think for me also, it's just when you look at replays, you get the opportunity to discuss different lines, different decisions, different risk evaluations. And even though it's hard for a similar situation to come up again in game later on, there's a lot of general abstractions or general principles that can apply and be super helpful, such as when should you be holding dust shoot, like what criteria make sense, or for example, when you should not play in agores or when you should play in agores. For me, I've come to define very specific set of principles based off my own experiences, and that's been super helpful. Something else that I find is really helpful is, I'm sure Dimitri can understand this as well, is just once you play a wide range of decks, you get to really understand each deck's choke points, their game style, their game plan, their win cons. And so when you're playing against it, it just really helps you read in a given game state, like what threats my opponent's presenting, how much danger am I actually in, and it really helps you make reads and evaluate risk from that point of view. So just a funny anecdote, I was playing a friend yesterday, and we played like 6 games, and I was able to like just read a lot of his back row correctly in 5 of them. I'll just be typing in chat, oh, you have this set, and next turn you're gonna make this play, and that's exactly what he did, which is kind of funny. It just feels like you're playing with the dust shoot even when you don't have dust shoot. So I think being able to just be familiar with what the game plan of different decks are, I think that's just a really unfair advantage. Yeah, I guess the third point is just grinding a lot. Even if you're not playing a lot of ladder games, just watching other people play and seeing, usually, I mean, no one's perfect, everyone makes mistakes, right? Seeing other people misplay and then trying to learn or gain a new insight based off what they did poorly. I think that's just super helpful and just helps you continuously evolve because no one's perfect. No one will ever be perfect. We're all trying to improve. And it's just like hitting the gym. There's no way to improve besides getting your reps in.
Facts. How about you, Sonny?
Honestly, I kind of agree with both of them. I think if I were to summarize what they both said, there's 2 most important things, which is just like replay review and having good friends. Like having good friends is really an important thing, otherwise you're going to lose interest very fast. You know, for me personally, I mean, these 2 in particular have helped me a lot with both of them because they are my friends and they've done a lot of replay review for me. I know I've had countless times where I'm just trying to chill, like turn my brain off, play some Edison, and then Pro Storms in my DMs being like, okay, you lost the game because you didn't set bottomless trap hole on turn 1. And I'm like, okay, thanks, man. Stuff like that. In general, the thing I would add is mostly that I think for regardless of what competitive activity you're doing, I don't necessarily think you need to invest like 100% of your time into it. That's kind of what I did because I was just super obsessed and I get addicted to things very easily. But I think if you're efficient with your time and as long as you're making progress and you have an idea of how to learn, then it doesn't really matter because eventually you're going to be improving every day. So for example, maybe that's like learning more decks, what more decks do. Maybe it's learning about more matchups. Maybe it's understanding how your deck operates. Maybe it's just making sure that your technical play is tighter. As long as something's improving every day, I think eventually you'll get to a point where you're pretty solid.
Yeah, I think that that's all great advice. I think it's really interesting to speak to this new technology we have with like being able to replay matches and how that's contributed to this sort of like exponential training and exponential growth factor, even like amongst just friends, like being able to analyze and discuss different lines. So that's pretty cool. So how important would you say having fun playing the game is to becoming a world champion? Would you say it's like an integral part? Or would you say it's not really necessary? Do you think you could grind to this level if you weren't having fun? Do you think that that's like a big part of it?
For me personally, I feel like if you don't love the game, like you can't really get to this level. That's just my personal opinion because first of all, it's a hobby, so you can't even like do this as a job. And there are people who play competitive activities for a job. So if you don't love something, I can't see how you could invest more time efficiently than people who actually do love the game. And that's just like my opinion, because people who love the game will naturally be more inclined to spend more time because it's just what they enjoy doing naturally. So I feel like it's actually essential. If you don't love the game, I don't know how you could really improve that often. And the more important thing I think is, this is just my personal opinion, but I always felt like it was a bit weird how people would do activities that they didn't really enjoy that are their hobbies, if that makes sense. So, for example, I used to play a lot of League of Legends, and I had a lot of friends that played League of Legends, and they hated it. And they would talk about how much they hate League of Legends every day. And I didn't understand because I also played that game, and when I stopped liking it, I just stopped playing it. I just feel like if you don't like something, it's just you could just find a new hobby that you do enjoy. But that might not be the best advice. There might be like external reasons why you have to continue doing a hobby, whether it's friends or whatever.
Especially with Yu-Gi-Oh, there's not really the enough money in it for it to be something that you can just like grind as a job instead of as a hobby. I've heard other games are much more financially manageable as an option. And so I think if you're trying to go that far into Yu-Gi-Oh, you really do need to love it because there's no other incentive to play. There's no other real reason to be in doing this stuff. I do know people who love the game for a while and then get burnt out and they like stay in the community but they don't really play at all. And I think that's fine, but you don't really get better at the game when you're not like interacting directly with it. And so it's sort of a stagnation period then. But I don't really see any reason to need to get better. You know, if you don't love the game, there's not really a reason to be good at it.
Yeah, those points all make sense. Just something else I'd add on is for me, I think having fun's the most important just because there's so much variance involved. You can grind so hard, but if your main goal is to win an event, I think that's probably the wrong goal because there's so many things that are outside of your control, like RPS and just how well you're drawing, how well your opponents are drawing in a day because not only do you have to be really good to win, of course, but you also have to be extremely lucky. I don't know a single person who's ever won an event that's never gotten lucky. You either have crazy runs with Dust Shoot Black Whirlwind or just crazy God Hands. It's just needed to win. So I think if your only goal is to win, you'll probably be depressed more often than not because it's an outcome you can't really control, unlike in other games or things like chess, for example, where it's all under your control. And yeah, having fun is definitely, I think important if you're playing and you weren't having fun or being pretty miserable about it. Just don't think it's very productive, and that toxicity probably rubs off on your opponents and the community. It's just not good overall, I think. And finally, I'd like to say when you're playing something that you do enjoy, like for example, I guess for Sunny, winning with Hero Frogs was probably the best possible outcome because it was his favorite deck, and he was able to win the biggest event. And it also reaffirms kind of that his pick and his deck is one of, if not the best decks in Edison right now. So I think, yeah, playing for fun makes it so when you do win, the victory tastes all that much more sweeter.
Yeah, I agree with all of you guys. Kind of to touch on Sunny's point with regards to why people may stay in the community, or Dimitri's point why people may stay in the community, is because we do have a lot of good friends who play this, and it can be somewhat alienating to full stop playing the game and then just all of a sudden have no reason to talk to these people or no reason to really engage with these people, or no common ground really, I should say, not no reason. I can see why some people may stick around past their enjoyment of the game due to like community and due to like that sort of friendship and bond that sort of comes attached with playing a game like this or whatever. But overall, I do agree with all three of you, and I think having fun is definitely the most important thing. To kind of follow up on that, I mean, obviously having fun is the ultimate goal, right? But now that you guys have made it to this like peak level, now that you guys are like Super Saiyan or whatever it is, now that you guys are world champions, what is your next goal with the game?
I guess I can start. So I guess I have two goals right now. I think the first one is since I live in Asia, it's not really that easy for me to enter online retro tournaments. So I was thinking maybe I just try to compete in actual worlds. Like maybe not, I'm not sure if I can qualify for this worlds necessarily, like 2023, because my work schedule is a bit awkward for this year. But maybe, I mean, or 2024, maybe next year, like 2025, I can try to like compete in actual worlds and win that. That would be kind of nice. Alternatively, I could just like switch over to being like educational content creator. Like I can maybe teach or like share things that I'm learning with just more people, help the format grow that way and stuff like that.
That would be sick. I love the Sunny videos, I will say. I know I mentioned it in the match, and I'm sorry to call you out while I didn't know your videos were deleted then, but that junk synchron video, especially, one of the best videos in Edison of all time, for sure. Maybe the best.
Yeah, you know what's funny about that is that I think the junk synchron video has like one of my worst analytics.
That's
Like
wild.
it did terrible. Yeah, I don't know what's happening there, but you know, at least you love it. So someone got was
Yeah,
really
and
happy about that video.
usually the most instructional and valuable videos get the lowest engagement for some reason.
I can actually
Yeah.
touch on that, having made a bajillion videos. Usually,
Yeah.
the videos that hit the broader audience, are not the most helpful or most informative videos. Sometimes they can be, depending on how you market it. But usually speaking, there's like a top percentage of people who are going to be interested in that level of knowledge. So, like, let's say if you cast a net, right? There's like 100 people who, have surface level interest in the game or just want something entertaining to watch while they eat. And then out of those people, maybe like 1% wants to watch that higher level stuff. So when you have like those truly like golden nugget, like informative videos, unless it's integral to the actual gameplay, like let's say an entry level guide, something like that, it's usually going to have your worst analytics unless it's marketed as like something insanely clickbaity.
Yeah, I get that. I guess. I mean, that happened to me too. Like my best video is literally a video I did zero scripting for, zero editing for. I just turned on my camera or I turned on my microphone, like cried about a ban list for 10 minutes and then somehow that was the best video, which is like a complete tragedy because I never wanted like some sort of negative video to be the most popular one, but it just kind of ended up being that way.
I'm sure, I guess, if you continued making content like moving forward, which to echo what Dimitri said, like I'm a huge fan of your videos. They were some of the only videos that I tuned into every single one for. I think if you were to make stuff moving forward, eventually something would outdo that as your best performing video, like without a doubt, especially now that you've, become world champion. That's like easy clickbait right there. Like I'm sure you could make something that outperforms that. So, but yeah, continuing on with the question, Dimitri, do you want to pick up where we left off?
Yeah. So I've got a couple goals, one of which is I've only been to one YCS so far, and I got third at it. And so that was very fun, but I would love to be able to get first at one. So I'll definitely be going to more next year of YCSs and hopefully in-person ribbits, but those might be harder to get to for a large part. Yeah, getting first at an in-person like 200-man tournament kind of thing, as well as just like yeah, consistently topping with different decks. I've topped with Blackwings, Vayu, and Frogs, but I have not yet topped with anything below the or beyond the like big three decks that people fixate on. And so I'd love to get more variety in there too.
It will be scary to see Dimitri at more YCSs because he's basically guaranteed topping.
I don't
Terrifying,
know about
truly,
that.
especially with the bet we have going, the hand destruction bet. Don't let him
I
know.
got the next build lined up.
I guess for me, I won what was it like 2 years ago now? The year after, I was kind of just took a long hiatus because I was traveling and was on my phone for the whole year. And I feel like since then, my mindset's been more on kind of side quests, if that makes sense. I never really enjoyed playing the meta, the big three, like Blackwing, Vayu, Frogs. I just feel like not only is it difficult from a competitive standpoint because everyone has really well thought out game plans and sideboard for you, but it also just never was the most fun for me. That's why I like stuff like, anything with Christia, like Fairies, Lightsworn, Dragon Turbo, things like that. And I'm always chatting with people on trying to make cool things work potentially. So yeah, I think because for me, I guess having won one event already, the urge to win another one isn't as high. I know that might sound a bit weird, but I have friends who, they're very strong, but they've yet to win one. And I know it drives them crazy because they're definitely good enough to win. It just hasn't happened yet. So I feel like for me, because I've already won one, the urgency isn't there to win another one. And I think I'd get more satisfaction from topping a major event with something rather rogue, whether it be like a different take on dragons or X Sabers or some like really funky deck. that would bring me a lot more satisfaction. So I think that's where my headspace is at right now. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of things, gears turning, things brewing in the background. But I genuinely do believe that playing something rogue has a lot of benefits for a tournament, just because the format's so well developed now. Everyone's played against, not just the big three, but the tier two decks too, like Machina. They've played against them so often now. They have really well thought out game plans, and so you don't really have a advantage from a information or strategic point of view when you sit down and play. It pretty much just comes down to, is my starting six going to be better than yours, and do I have sideboard for you, and will I see that sideboard? There's not really like a second level of, oh, I need to formulate a game plan on the spot. How do I react to this? And I think when you're able to introduce that element to the game, it usually creates a lot of favorable situations for you. Sorry, it's getting a bit long now, but just for example, when I played fairies 2 years ago, most people I played against, because they never played against the deck, they just didn't have a good game plan. They didn't know what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do. For example, like you never want to leave a target like a attack position greffer for me to just like crash for recruiters and drop Christie at turn one, right? If you special summon Goyo, it should be in defense mode rather than attack because I can't clear 2000 defense. Just small things like that. So that's just a small anecdote, but in general, I think when you play something rogue, you introduce more opportunities for your opponents to misplay just based off unfamiliarity. And that, to me, is a form of advantage that I'm trying to seek because I think the format is so well developed now, it's really difficult to gain an advantage just from playing meta decks that everyone's super familiar with and has already seen 10 times over and probably has your exact 55 somewhere in their mental mind.
I think that's honestly a great point.
Yeah, this isn't.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good. I just wanted to say, like, it's not really about the competitive advantage that ProStorm was talking about, but that's why one of my favorite people to play against in the whole format is Ranok, because whenever I play, he's always making new decks, and one of my favorite things to do is just to play against someone with a new strategy and try to figure out how it works on the spot. Like, the first time I ever, like, took a break from Edison when I first moved to Asia was that I didn't play in a while, and then I played against Ranok on the ladder, and he played that Garden Frog deck against me, and I never saw that before, and he just 5 zone locked me on turn 1, and then while we were drawing passing, I was trying to figure out how am I supposed to clear this? And there's various things you can do. You can tribute side over it. You can hold removal for the black garden. You can hold 3 points of interaction so that you can torrential the board eventually. But it's just like things like that where that's why I feel like Ranok is really special because he can think of new decks, and that's like one of my favorite things to do whenever I'm playing Edison. Just like play against the new strategies.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree with both you guys, and I think that like in a tournament setting when you don't need to beat this person like repeatedly. You just need to surprise them once, and that'll get you the match victory for the next round. I think in a tournament setting, that sort of surprise factor goes above and beyond even like tier listing in some cases because, maybe your deck is worse than your opponent's. But if you have like some surprise cards or some cards that only need to work once or twice, then, that's all it takes to win a tournament, right? So that's a really cool goal, I think, ProStorm. And it kind of leads me into my next question, especially what you said about Raunuk. But my next question is, which player and which decks are you guys like the most scared to face off against?
Well, in my video, I said that the only person at Rulers I really did not want to play against no matter what was Dimitri. So that was a bit unfortunate for me. But
Let's go.
I was really afraid of Dimitri. He's just like, he does everything I absolutely like hate to play against. He's just like maximizing like the like new text and like that widens the threat range and it makes it really hard for you to read him and it's just really annoying to play against. Another thing I would probably not want to play against is Gladiator Beast. I usually try to avoid Gladiator Beast whenever I can just because I know a lot of people say that like frogs beat Gladiator Beast. I just completely disagree. I really cannot see how, like after playing her for both sides, I really feel like GBs are just favored in that matchup. Some other players I feel like are really good, but I wouldn't say I'm necessarily afraid of them, but I think they're really good players are like Spiral. I've never played Spiral in a tournament yet, but whenever I play Spiral on ladder or whenever I play against or whenever I watch Spiral's replays, I feel like he is really, really good at the game. His technical play is just really tight. Another player I think is really good is Phil, but like Phil kind of is no longer underrated since he had a really good year. And then I think I also think Freya is a really good player, but no one really talks about her either. I think it's mostly just that they're relatively quiet people, so they don't, since they're not like boasting about themselves, then they kind of fly under the radar a little bit.
Yeah, pretty similar here. I think the only person that I like consistently feel outplayed by when I've played them is Raunak. He has amazing frog technical play. I'll review his replays and be like very confused by some things does, and then like a little bit later realize why that's the right play and why what I was thinking was not quite as good. And he comes up with these plays that I wouldn't even consider some of the time. Is really impressive stuff to watch him, and I love facing him. I love frog mirrors, but I'm definitely like I think the chance of me winning against him is potentially lower than winning against anyone else. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I'm not really afraid of anyone, I guess. I just don't think you should ever be afraid of someone, even if you're sitting across from someone who's really decorated. You're still just playing a card game, and I feel like and you should just never feel, mentally defeated or intimidated before you start, because that's just shooting yourself in the foot, in my opinion. And the other thing to keep in mind is when you're sitting down, even if someone is, quote unquote, much better than you, like even if they're like a 70-30 favorite, you're still gonna beat them 30% of the time just by, drawing broken or them bricking or winning RPS or something stupid like that, opening Dust Shoot or Future Fusion or some sack card. So I feel like, the games are much more even than we can expect. And in terms of decks scared of playing, I'm always afraid of playing against Dragon Turbo or Light Sworns. Like I don't actually get triggered by things like turn one Black Whirlwind, Chura. To me, it's just part of the game now. But for some reason, I've always been super triggered when Lightsworn players mill Wolf. Like I don't know what it is about it, but that triggers me the most out of anything else in this format. It just feels so stupid and undeserved, if that makes sense. Or when Dragon Turbo opens their turn one, like draw through their whole deck, and you just have no way to beat that. But luckily, with both Lightsworn and Dragon Turbo, a lot of the pilots aren't the greatest, and you can sometimes steal wins just by them misplaying. But that trend's not going to last forever, and people are always improving and learning from their mistakes. So, yeah, that's I guess my answer.
Very quickly, the best form of intimidation is that world's mat, is the Ribbit Rulers winning mat. It is so funny to play with that against people, and it's so good. So definitely try that out.
Yeah, I think
I
you're
was just gonna
talking.
hang mine on my wall, to be honest.
That's hilarious. I think you're talking to the only two
Sorry,
people
keep
who
going.
could who could even follow that advice, Dimitri. That's like not for the audience.
Yep.
And
Yep.
as
No,
of
it's
right
not.
now, you're the only one who has the mat. I still gotta get it to the other two of you guys. So remind me after this to send me your like shipping information,
Sure, sure.
ProStorm and Sunny and stuff, because I still want to get you guys your mats. Like, right? That's so funny. Anyway, as far as like decks that you guys are scared of, Dimitri, Sunny, is there any like one strategy that you're like, dang, I really hope that I don't face that, or like I hope that they don't mill Wolf against me or whatever? Is there something that you guys kind of feel kind of anxiety when you get paired up against?
It's really only, for me personally, it's really only, I would say, Gladiator Beast and Dragon Turbo probably, mainly because I play frogs, so those are typically not the best matchups, but everything else I'm pretty comfortable against. Even Dragon Turbo, I feel mostly pretty good. It's just that it's not, the actual gameplay is just so not intellectually stimulating that I feel like it just like is a bit monotonous for me. Otherwise, I would say I quite like playing against every other deck in the format. Usually when I enter a tournament, I just hope my bracket is like 10 values, essentially, is how I feel.
I think with frogs facing 10 values can be good, but if they're good players, then it's a little worse. Um, Blackwings is one consistently where if I'm building a strange deck, it's like, man, I hope I don't face Blackwings with this. But I think that a lot of the more normal decks do have good Blackwing matchups. And that's what makes them normal decks, is because they actually can beat Blackwings.
Interesting. So it just depends on what you guys are playing, really, and it doesn't really have like like a personal sort of feeling. Well, I mean, it does in your case, honey, but for you, Dimitri, there's no like one deck where it just like tilts you or something like that.
Yeah, entirely. I do think I have a bit of a defensive stance against Glads kind of thing, where it's like I really want to keep showing to people that that matchup is favorable for frogs, and I think very few people consider it favorable for frogs. But yeah, so I definitely when I'm facing Glads, like sit forward in my chair and like pay more attention, but it's less out of fear and more out of wanting to prove something.
It's interesting to see how like faced with like the quote unquote the most perceived challenge, it more so motivates you rather than diminishes your resolve. And I wonder if that goes towards what it takes to be a world champion type shit. All right. Next question. Let me see what I got written here. Give me a sec.
Did ProStorm answer?
Yeah, he did say Light Sworn and Dragon.
Yeah, I mentioned Lights on Track. Although I'd
Oh, that's
also
right.
add
Yep.
on, I really hate running into hamster. Maybe
Oh
it's
yeah.
because back when I was playing
The typical
fairies,
fairy
and there's
player,
the
yeah.
only way was recruiter attack, and when you run a hamster, you're just so cooked. But even with black wings too, like you try not to swing into hamsters, you try to play around sets, make them flip it on their turn if they're bad, but still too many instances where you open like Shura Bora Bora, and the only line is potentially just attacking sometimes and hoping it's not a hamster. So I know my fellow Blackwing enthusiasts also hate it. Like uh, I'd be playtesting Vayu against them, and then they'd swing, and I'm just like, damage is okay. It's like, yeah, I flip the hamster, I can just see their eyes rolling, and it's just, yeah, no one likes running a hamster.
I think what's funny is you're mentioning this, but this was actually one of the very first things that was discussed about this format when it was revisited, I believe, in 2016, is the hamster paradigm of like, is it set hamster or is it set Raikou, is one of the worst parts of the format because it's one of the only points in the format where it's just direct gambling. It's like straight up like you have no control over the right play in that situation. You just have to take a 50-50. And so it's kind of interesting to see as the format develops, there's like honestly less hamster. There's obviously hamster in like Vayu and like Machina, but there's less of the plant decks playing hamster. Like plants now more so play like trade in and stuff like that instead of playing the hamster stuff. So it seems that your sentiment is shared by a large percentage of people who are building decks because not only do they want to avoid running into that paradigm themselves, but it also creates paradigms yourself, like going second with hamster and stuff like that. So very interesting that that's a card that you happen to mention.
I go on these deck building binges where I'm obsessed with something in particular, and in the last month I've been really obsessed with this new thing I've discovered called Hamster Raikou Caius. And I've realized more and more that Raikou feels like a Garnet, and Hamster is the reason that you play Raikou. And so while Hamster is so threatening, those decks, that's why they're like not a large part of the meta, is because in order to play triple Hamster, you have to be on like triple Raikou, and then that's just too many flips. So yeah.
Yeah, I concur. I've actually played decks with two hamster, one Raikou before, and like Pot of Avarice as well. And I think that there's more creative approaches to it to sort of get the most out of the hamster without having to draw a million flip effects. But I totally understand
Yep.
what you mean about Raikou feeling like a Garnet. I mean, a card that eats up your normal summon is definitely not ideal, especially with the format being as fast as it is. Anyway, next question. Moving on. Are there any lists? Because you're talking about your new fascinations, right? Like you guys are always like cooking, you guys are always deck building, you're always brewing. Are there any lists from this season of RBET, or are there any cards that, speaking to your hamster fascination, or like, are there any cards that you guys think have untapped potential that you guys have been brewing with that you feel comfortable sharing, or is there anything that you think could potentially start to define future metagames?
For me personally, I feel like, well, I'm not really too updated on the meta because I took a bit of a break this year, but something that I thought was really interesting is how the Amaryllis decks have developed. Because the way I felt about that deck was it was just a Carpathian deck when it first came out. It's the same as all Carpath decks. Like Carpath is really good at identifying some sort of synergy or like one sort of underexplored card, and then he will just sacrifice consistency in his deck to all in on that synergy, and it will just have broken win conditions. It will have spot removal. It will just have like and aggressive pushes, and then within those decks, I typically always find that because the consistency is so bad that there's no way to fix it. But Amaryllis keeps performing, and it kind of makes sense. It has every other quality of it being a strong deck, and then the consistency is getting better as people figure out how to remove like bricks. Like maybe you get rid of volcanic counters that don't do anything when you draw them, or maybe you get rid of these other cards that you can play miracle fertilizers, which actually do something whenever you have a setup. But I still don't really know how you can possibly fix the issue of the fact that your deck plays at least 5 level 8 monsters that don't do anything in your hand. So I don't know if the Amaryllis players like have a solution for that, but I'm really excited to see how they sort of figure that out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very similar. I remember both, I think it was Nat's Head, triple Karma Cut in the main in an Amaryllis list, and there was that Ribbit top with triple Vortex in the main, both in Amaryllis. And I think there's so many Amaryllis is the deck right now with probably the most variety in how people build it. And so I'm definitely excited to see how that one comes further in the future.
yeah, I definitely agree. Amaryllis is the first thing on my mind. Just that theft build that No Suck Gaming created, and I think Keza. I don't know if they played exact 55, but it looked quite strong on stream. And topping 2 RBETs back to back is definitely impressive. And I think other things to look out for. Well, I guess for me, the decks I've played the most, I've just really enjoyed Christia and Red Med as my 2 main boss monsters in the format, I guess, if that makes sense. And I feel like they're just still so broken and underexplored. Like, obviously the heavy recruiter fairy list is super outdated, but the idea of making a very consistent Christia still sits very strongly in my head in terms of being a powerful force to be respected in this format. There's that chaos fairy list that was kind of interesting. The pudding fairy list with the V charges, trying to add Christia to light swords. I feel like there's still room to improve upon that concept somehow. And then Red Med too. I think Red Med is just so broken. And I know, Keegan, we had a recent discussion on this, but I'm just shocked that more people haven't tried to build around Red Med, because obviously there's the Dragon Turbo, which is extremely broken, but you don't have to play like light, like full combo. Maybe something else could work out. Just an easy to spam boss monster with the free +1 and insane stats. It just seems too broken not to try to capitalize on.
I think those are all interesting choices. I mean, those are the ones that come to mind. But yes, the Red Med discussion we had recently was very interesting. Without giving away too much, I hope that we will be seeing some results from you in the near future with the stuff you've been cooking with regards to Red Med Pro Storm. I think that'd be really exciting. Speaking of like just variation in Edison format, all three of you guys have won the world championship, and I posed this question to you before the video started. Between your 3 decks, you guys only shared 5 cards in the main deck. So 3 different world champions with 3 like incredibly different decks. Like almost 90% of your deck is different person to person, playstyle to playstyle, that sort of thing. Do you guys happen to know the 5 cards that were in all 3 of your decks?
Dimitri, did you play Gores in your deck? Because if we're sharing a
Yeah,
monster, it can only be
Gores
Gores, right?
for sure.
I
Gores
was on
definitely.
Vayu. I was on multiple draw traps, and so I think I would have been on Gores. I think that would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's get the for sure's out of the way, right? Heavy, Storm, MST,
Mirror
and
Force,
Brain
Brain
Control.
Control. Yeah.
Air Force
So
Brain.
Mirror
that's probably
Force
like
Yeah.
the 4 biggest
maybe,
staples
but
of the format.
I'm not sure if Mirror Force. It's a more of a question mark. I think Trap Dush. I'm pretty sure Sunny had Dushu too, so I'd say
No, I think
Yeah.
Dushu.
So actually,
I don't know if Mirror Force. It comes down to Mirror Force or Gores. Honestly, I've been known to play like the third prison over Mirror Force, but I'm pretty sure I played Mirror. I can't recall, to be honest.
I'm pretty
But
sure you were on Mirror.
I remember people net decking you a lot, and I'm pretty sure I got Mirror Forced a lot back then.
yeah,
So
I think I
Yeah.
probably played Mirror because the deck had no +1, so you needed to cash in on the +1. So what
but
would it be?
does that mean
Mirror
Dimitri
Force?
didn't play Gores? That doesn't sound right to me
Mm,
either, because that means like
I think it's
I feel
possible.
like Dimitri is
Vayu
on the
hasn't
no Gores,
played
no
Gores
deck
a lot.
mindset.
This is so funny. I didn't know this
it's
question
it's
would like
Dushu for
Um,
sure though. It's Dushu, Storm, Brain, MST, and it's either Mirror Force or Gores. Sunny played MST, right? I know some people have cut MST to the side, but I think in Hero Frog
No,
you
I
probably
had
need it in
MST
the
for
main deck.
sure.
All right,
Yeah.
you
lock it
gotta
in.
have
Lock
MST
it
in
in. Lock
frogs.
it in. Is it Mirror Force or is it Gores? Lock it in.
I
let's.
think it's Mirror Force. I think
I
I
think it's
wasn't on
Mirror
Gores,
Force.
and I think we all were on Mirror Force. Yeah.
I think it's Mirror.
Okay. Okay, you guys got it right. It's Heavy Storm, Brain Control, Space Typhoon, Mirror Force, and Trap Dust Shoot. Those are the only 5 cards that you guys played in the main deck that were the same. And yeah, Dimitri did not play Gores despite playing Legacy of Yatagrasu in his deck, but quite interesting, quite interesting. In the side deck, you guys all played. There were 3 cards that overlapped in all of your side deck, and it was 2 copies of Dust Tornado and 1 copy of Compulsory Evacuation Device. So, out of all 3 world champions, the only cards that we can quote unquote call are like staples to all of these different strategies are Heavy Storm, Space Typhoon, Brain Control, Mirror Force, Dust Shoot, and then in the side, Dust Tornado and Compulsory Evacuation Device, which is very interesting. So,
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it could even be smaller. Like I don't think you necessarily have to play Compulse or um, Mirror Force to be honest. Like you could replace it with other defense. That would also be fine.
I just think
Ye-
Compulse being in a sideboard, I think that's really interesting. Like Compulse before Torrential or other quote unquote staples. I think it just speaks to the versatility of Compulse. You know, there's so many cool tricks you can do with it, like Compulse in your own, Dark Armed, to play around Bottomless, to play around Brain, being a fast out to Stardust. It's like I really like versatile cards, and Compulse just does so many cool tricks.
Yeah, I think Compulse is definitely the like odd man out of those cards. It's like back row removal, and then all of the cards that get like consistent free +1s in every deck. Torrential being the one that's like weirdly not included, but I guess Pro Storm didn't run that maybe, or I didn't run
No,
that.
I
I
didn't.
don't
No, I'm
know.
pretty sure
No, I didn't have
Sunny
Compulse.
didn't
I didn't have
either.
Tarantula in my deck. I just think
Oh,
it's not
did
good
you
with
have it
frogs, but
sided,
that's like a
Sonny?
personal thing. No, I didn't have it in my 55 at all.
I definitely agree. Like from my time playing Hero Frog, I found Torrential to be super awkward against better players, but that's just my opinion.
Torrential for me in Hero Frogs was always just like a chump checker. Like it would work on ladder, and then I'd play against real people, and they would just swing, and I'd have to like self
Yeah,
torrential. It happened against you actually in the tournament because you played against Ungo, and then he was locked behind his torrential. You swung, and then he had to summon Swap Frog to trigger the torrential, and then lost next turn. So
yeah, that happened to me a lot on ladder too. Like I'll be staring down a Stratus, Gear Frame, or Shura kind of card, and I have Torrential, and you know, against noobs, they'll just slam into the torrential and you just kill them. But usually when I'm playtesting against like really good players, like they just swing with their Shura or Stratos and they make you do something. And the torrential is just always was super awkward for me. So that was kind of my rationale for cutting it. But I agree that it's a noob checker and maybe when you go to a big event, there's enough people you play early on who will walk into torrential to make it worthwhile. But you know, for something like RBET rulers, where the quality of the opponent is so high, I just wouldn't expect that to happen for it to be consistently getting you +1s. But that's just my own opinion.
I do think torrential is broken in every other deck, like except for pretty much only Frog is the deck that I don't like torrential in. Every other deck, I'm like all about the torrential.
Yeah, although I do think you should still have it in your sideboard because it's in a mirror. It's still really nice. Just having a 7 stop.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think what's interesting is that in my play group, I've had a couple players mention the sort of quote unquote downsides of torrential is that it's like kind of a brick when you're winning or when you're ahead. And sometimes like you need to close out the game and you have the position and torrential tribute sacrifices the position and it sacrifices your ability to close out the game. So I've seen some players in my group play maybe not Hero Frogs, but like decks like Quick Draw, decks like Value Turbo, and decks like I believe Black Wings, not play Torrential Tribute. So whether or not I agree with that, it's just interesting to see that it has been more argued over than I think Compulsory Evacuation Device, especially in like my play group. I think a lot of people in my play group, myself included, are starting to see like the power of Compulsory Evacuation Device and how useful it is, especially with like, let's just say like, oh, you have some amount of pressure and your opponent's on like have to resolve this normal summon or this special summon to be able to continue. Compulsory really just interacts with something like no questions asked. And while it's not great like early on in the game and stuff like that, I can totally see how it's like kind of a universal card between all 3 of your decks. And it's possibly something we should be considering more heavily as a staple moving forward, because just the ability to like reuse a Caius, like you said, or reuse a Stratos or something like that is pretty good. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, it's also just a jank Book of Moon to dodge brain because I mean everyone's been in that situation where like you commit a boss monster but you're low on life and you're just fearing you're praying they don't have brain in hand but they've been holding that card in hand for like 4 turns and you just don't have a way to play around it outside of making Thought Ruler but so I think that interaction is pretty insane and yeah, and just going back to the torrential point, even when I play Black Wings, and I love torrential and Black Wings, but sometimes I'll make the board of Stardust and I won't have a good back row to set outside of torrential, and it's always awkward. Like, sure, you can use torrential to Stardust dodge a Caius, but it's still, you know, even compulsive would be better. So I do agree with that. When you're in a winning game state, or you're looking to close, torrential doesn't isn't really great because it's a bit counterintuitive. If you make a board with Ab Zero or Dark Armed or whatever, you really don't want to set torrential behind it. But it's at the same time, it's just such a blowout against frogs that it's probably still required to be played at one in the main.
So it's also really interesting the one your comment about the like break on low life is very much a Christia player's issue. I mean, it's everyone's issue, but especially for Christia. But two, um the whole issue with torrential in frogs, I think, is the reverse of other decks. Where torrential in frogs is actually best when you set it behind a board. Because like everyone was saying, if they just have one monster and are beating you down with a Sure or something, torrential is an issue for frogs. But if they have like something smaller than you, like if you have a Caius and you're beating them down, torrential all of a sudden becomes really good because they have to commit pretty hard often to out the Caius profitably. And so then they play into the torrential pretty strong.
I think the main issue with that is you will be losing whatever you're losing. So in a way, no matter what they commit, like let's say they commit like Blizzard into Goyo, that sort of thing, they're going to be clearing your pressure. So they've kind of accomplished their goal one way or another. And I think that that's like, I can totally see how that could be counterintuitive. But it's an amazing card. I'm not trying to say like it should be or shouldn't be in the deck. I just think that like I can totally understand both sides of the argument.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
for
depends
sure.
on what you're playing against. Like Blackwings have non-committal ways of removing Caius just because Kalut's a hand trap. Whereas Vayu really struggles and they need to commit multiple pieces, whether it be a plague stack or like should be an arm wing for Caius, and that's when Torrential blows them out. And
Yep.
yeah, I also would have to say that Torrential is great when you have like a dupe board, especially, I guess, just using Vayu again as an example, because outside of Raikou or Brain Caius, it's just super committal for them to clear dupes. Whereas, Blackwing just doesn't care. They just set Icarus and your Torrential's looking real bad. So it definitely depends on what you're playing against. But yeah.
Those are
Interesting.
really good points. I'm like absolutely going to be stealing those whenever I try to explain this next.
Yeah, I think that would be sick in a Sunny video. Kappa, no pressure or anything though.
Yeah.
No, I'm just joking. Moving on from that. I had a question that I thought about in my brain while we were talking about that, and then I kind of lost it somewhere in the sauce. But I guess we can move on to the final question, which is, what do you guys think will win the next RBET rulers? Like, if you just had to guess, if you had to predict.
I guess the most standard answer is just big three. Like everyone always predicts these decks to win tournaments because they win the most tournaments. But I have a more optimistic view of the format. I guess I really think that there's like a lot of decks, but outside of the big three, that could absolutely win events. Like I think Amaryllis has demonstrated to me that it could win an event. I think that Dragon Turbo can win events. Honestly, I think Gladiator Beast could also win an event if like because I don't think there's any really unwinnable matchups for that except for Hero Beat, which everyone thinks is bad. I even think Hero Beat could win an event. Like I have a very optimistic list of like 10 decks that could really win an event. Zombies, I also feel like fell off for not for no reason, but I feel like it could come back for sure.
I feel like I'm gonna go with Glads on this one. Glads or Amaryllis. I just think that um the the big three swings where like there's one deck that's like more popular than the other two, and generally whatever deck counters that tends to be better than all of the big three.
But what does GB counter among those three, in your opinion? Because you think that GB like Frog beats GBs, so then I'm a
I
bit
think most frog players are bad, and so I think GBs beat most frog players pretty handily.
okay. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess the issue is that, like, this is RBET rulers, right? This is a prediction for the world championship. So they have to be at least a certain skill level to enter. So if you think that GBs doesn't have any favorable matchups, not that I think that GBs isn't favorable against frogs or isn't favorable against blackwings or whatever, but I'm just curious, do you think the average RBET ruler entrant is bad in comparison to maybe like a standard that you think they should be at? And do you think that they might be at that standard within a year?
I think I think for a lot of decks and a lot of matchups, the players at Ribbit Rulers are really good. Glads, I don't know most of their matchups, I will say. I don't really have much of a clue of how good they are against Vayu or Blackwing kind of thing. Frogs is the one that I've faced them the most with. And I think there's very few people that I've seen play Frogs against Glads where I've thought that they actually play it well enough to be winning against Glads. And it really doesn't seem to me that better Glad play can like counteract better Frog play there. And so I think like top level Frog against top level Glad, Frog wins. But I think it's more like the level of Ribbit Ruler's top 8 player and not just Ribbit Ruler entrance player.
I see. I see. How about you, ProStorm?
Yeah, I guess for rulers, if you're asking me what would win Anaheim, it's probably a different answer, 'cause it's just what 1 week away. But for rulers, I guess I'd have to go stick with my guns. Probably a light deck. I think Christia is too broken. Judgment Dragon's also insanely broken into the big three. It's probably some new Christia Lightstorm version. I think that the ceiling's just too high. And I feel like even for rulers this time, I don't know how many people are actually citing light mirrors and skill drain. I know Amaryllis was citing skill drain, but just from my experience playing Lightstorms, it just has such a good matchup into Blackwings. Although I guess there's more consecrated outs now because Fissure's more popular, even Ryo's a bit more popular. But you can counter that counter side potentially. Yeah, I'd probably just pick some light variant, whether or not it's running Christia or just AD, but it's just too strong in my eyes, and it has good matchups spreads into the big three.
Very interesting predictions. I think you guys all gave something like pretty different, which is awesome. And it'd be interesting if all of you or none of you are right in one way or another, but I'm excited to see what wins in the next season. I think it's really sick that we've had such a cool variety thus far. It really speaks to the format, and it speaks to like you guys, honestly, as players and as champions, that you were able to win with like such different strategies that really, I think you guys enjoyed the strategies that you won with, or at least that's the vibe I'm getting from you guys. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time today and doing this video. I know it was kind of busy, like trying to coordinate everyone's schedules. We're all on like international stuff and that sort of thing. But is there any closing remarks, anywhere people can find you that you guys want to plug while you're still here, basically?
I guess you can, if you're interested, you can follow me at Sunny YGO on YouTube. I'm planning a revival of the channel, probably. Just probably going over my frog deck from rulers. It's probably going to be the first thing. But yeah.
I've got
Nice.
a channel as well, Dimitri Yugioh. Not as good as Sunny's, and I haven't been posting on it. I probably will once I move again, which is going to be this coming summer. But until then, I probably won't be posting much at all.
Yeah, I don't have anything to plug, but just keep on grinding and keep on learning. Learning never stops.
That's a great closing remark. Thank you guys, and congratulations on all of your accomplishments in the game. I'm sure that the people watching, as well as myself included, really appreciate the time and effort you guys have put into making the game fun, honestly, and exciting, and all of that. So, cheers, guys. I really appreciate it.